Hello and welcome to revision tips for SIPS Level 5 Advanced Diploma in Procurement and Supply, Module 8 Project and Change Management. This is Learning Outcome 1, which is to understand aspects of projects in organisations. So we're going to look at those aspects of projects, look at the impact on supply chain relationships and the resources that are needed for projects as well as the project life cycle. So a project is well defined with a project charter that spells out exactly what the scope and objectives are for the project. But a programme tends to have greater levels of uncertainty. A project represents a single effort. It's a group of people forming a team and working towards a common goal. But a programme is different. It's a collection of projects, and together, all the projects form a cohesive package of work. Some projects do go on for several years, but most projects will be shorter than that. But on the other hand, programs are defined as longer. So a project team works towards achieving certain outputs, and the outputs are tangible, whereas a program team works towards delivering outcomes. And the outcomes can be tangible, but they're not always tangible. There are different types of methodologies used in projects and programs, including waterfall and agile. Waterfall project management is a sequential linear process of project management. It consists of several discrete phases. No phase begins until the prior phase is complete, and each phase completion is terminal. But waterfall management doesn't allow you to return to the previous phase. The only way to revisit a phase is to start the phase all over again. Agile project management is an iterative approach to planning and guiding project processes. So an agile project is completed in small sections. The Infrastructure and Project Authority are the government's authority for reviewing all major projects and programs. But stakeholders are usually identified at program level. And methods for identifying stakeholders would include developing a formal register, task-by-task assessment, systematic analysis of information through the process of horizon scanning, brainstorming, scenarios, and storytelling. And the Mendelow's matrix is used to map stakeholders based on two factors: the influence and power of the stakeholder versus the interest. Those that have got high power and high interest are your key players. You need to manage them closely. But Freeman identified there are 6 categories of stakeholders: owners, employees, managers, suppliers, customers, and the local community. And their level of interest in the project will depend. You know, there's another dimension to this, which is from an author called Clayton. He extended it to create something called the Big 6 stakeholder characteristics. So there's interest, there's needs, there's their attitudes, impact, as well as their power and influence. So stakeholder engagement seeks to develop broad and inclusive support for the project and the project team, and it ensures that stakeholder relationships are managed throughout the process. But it does require the project team to develop and plan for engaging with those stakeholders, and to prioritise the resources available to implement, monitor, and adapt the stakeholder improvement plan as the project evolves. So we should by now be familiar with the Mendelow's matrix, which provides guidance on how we involve stakeholders based on their power and interest. And there are 4 categories: keep satisfied, keep informed, minimal effort, and key players. So when developing an improvement plan and an involvement plan for your stakeholder, it is important to recognise that stakeholders may be more or less interested in different aspects of your project, and their position of interest and power may change as the project progresses. In the mid-1980s, Dr. Martin Barnes created the triangle of objectives. The triangle demonstrates that quality, cost, and time are interrelated. Focusing or fixing one point of the triangle impacts on the other two. In other words, if one part of the triangle is fixed and the other 2 points have to move, then if quality is fixed, for example, time and costs may need to increase. To use the triangle, project teams must assess all changes, risks, and issues against the triangle and weigh up the course of action against the impact of the project objective. So, for example, if the key project constraint is cost, only the most business critical change requests affecting expenditure are likely to be approved. However, if quality is the biggest goal, and cost might have to accommodate the enhanced requests. This is sometimes known as the iron triangle as well, or the CQT. Now, there's no single method of organisational structure that can be used to manage projects to success. Different organisations handle the functional projects differently. Some have fragmented and decentralised groups with multiple titles, indicating that they are projects, while others might have large aggregations of project management teams in a central support unit. But you do need to focus on a number of points. Don't bother prioritising the organisation's overall project load. Encourage the sponsors and stakeholders to take a passive role. Set up ongoing commitments and committees that focus on management processes. Don't interrupt team members relentlessly. You need to create a culture in which project managers are expected to roll over and take it when substantively new deliverables are added halfway through the project. And these are some of the things that would be sort of success or failure of a project. I mean, I would suggest that a lot of these are coming up as what would sort of lead to a failure, to be honest. You know, when you're halfway through a project and most of the deliverables have begun to take shape, if you added a whole bunch of previously unnamed stakeholders later on, that's probably going to cause an issue. So yeah, just have a think about what might actually make a project successful or not, as the case may be. Because I think when a project failure happens, it can happen to any organisation and to any project. And there's loads of reasons why projects fail. And some are out of the control of the project manager, some failure is controllable. But the goal of project management is to produce a successful product or service. Often this goal is hindered by the errors or omissions, as well as commissioned by management, project managers, team members, and others associated with the projects. Now, procurement projects are temporarily organisational groups brought together to deliver specific business objectives. And business objectives are related to procurement in a number of ways. They may be initiated by procurement, they may require the involvement of procurement, and they may have outcomes that directly affect the procurement and supply function. But Lyson and Farrington offer 7 clear stages of the project life cycle. So the first one at the top is the strategic stage. This is when a strategic plan is developed, including the justification for a project, the cost benefit analysis, the business case, and the approval for the project is signed off. Moving on to the initiation stage, a project charter is created, budget is allocated, and the project kick-off meeting is arranged to establish the project and project team. Moving into the planning stage, a project management plan is developed and finalised. The scope of the project is broken down into component parts. A network diagram is established. The timeframe for completion of each component is estimated, and a critical path is established. Stage 4 is the design stage. And depending on the project, a design phase may be needed, including selection of designers, competitive tendering, and even a design schedule. The bid award stage is where contractors are appointed through a pre-qualification and tendering process, leading to a bid award and finalised contract agreement. The build construction stage is where the project activities and tasks require support and involvement from the project and wider cross-functional team. Resolving changes to specs, managing conflict, monitoring budgets and resource allocation. and managing performance. The closeout stage is when the project is completed. Project contracts are settled, deliverables are accepted, and payments are authorised. And significant investment from the procurement and supply function is needed to ensure that each stage adds value and contributes to the project's success. An easy way to think of work breakdown structures is being similar to a family tree. That is, that the tree structure shows the subdivision or levels of a component necessary to deliver a project or program. Work breakdown structures are very useful for establishing an agreement between stakeholders and project team members as the scope of the project continues. And then supply chain networks. A network describes a more complex structure where organizations can be cross-linked. And there are two-way exchanges between them. Chain describes a simpler sequential set of links, but a network is a management of lots of different activities along a lot of distribution channels, which add value to customers through the development and delivery of the products and services. Now, depending on the industry or sector, different types of supply networks might be used. Supermarkets would have multifaceted networks. Fleet management would be much more simple and probably a tiered or a single supplier agreement. And then we've got subcontractors or sub-suppliers that sit below our supply chain. And there are 6 tips for building better subcontract relationships. Pre-qualify them, set guidelines, rules and expectations from the start. Keep your subcontractors in the loop and communicate often. Try and document digitally with them. Continually track progress and reward good performance. Project managers can increase the capacity of the project team by choosing to form a consortium or joint venture with another organisation. This can help them access contract opportunities that would otherwise be outside the scope of their organisation due to the size, product or service range or experience requirements. So a joint venture is where 2 or more parties form a legal entity, contributing equally and sharing expenses to undertake an economic activity together, and has the following characteristics. It's a cooperative arrangement between 2 existing organisations, incorporated as a business in its own right. It provides access to new technology, capacity and expertise with partners, which can open up business opportunities in new geographical markets. It creates flexibility to explore non-core aspects of the organisation's business operations without exiting from its core business. It remains a key collaborative partnership model, popular particularly in the public sector. And it offers an opportunity for the procurement and supply function to offer a different route to market for products and services for the organisation alongside partners who bring knowledge and expertise to that partnership. Deacon provides 3 suggestions for achieving success through a joint venture. Firstly, assess the business opportunity. And secondly, consider whether the industry and geographical location of that joint venture partner are likely to provide you with a genuine business opportunity. And lastly, select the correct entry strategy. So it is important that the right partners are chosen who can add value to an organisation. Demonstrate that it is a business, and it's essential that senior managers understand the business case for joining the joint venture, and expectations are set out regarding the added value that will be created. So a vertical joint venture, the activities of the partners tend to follow on from each other in sequence. A horizontal one is where the partners will generally carry out the work in parallel, so they work together to create the project or program. Homogeneous joint ventures is where the partners will be operating in broadly the same industry, whereas a heterogeneous joint venture is where partners will be operating in different industries and will therefore have specialisms in different disciplines. And then we have a consortium. which is an association of individuals or organisations who pool their resources to participate in a common industry to achieve a common goal, and has the following characteristics. It's an association of individuals or organisations who pool their resources. They wouldn't be able to perform the activities independently. They're established as self-financing bodies with a clear, defined project scope and deliverable and a detailed budget. Once contracts have been secured, individual consortium members concentrate on their own contract with the client organisation. They're easier to establish than joint ventures because they're not legal entities in the sense of being separate businesses. They're established through consortium agreements. It's possible to withdraw from the consortium agreement if circumstances change. And partnership with another consortium member provides learning opportunities for all parties. But Van Wil highlighted how traditional procurement and supply relationships have progressed from the transactional approach to the value chain orientation found in more contemporary relationships. They outline 6 stages of purchasing development, starting with transactional orientation, where the supply relationship is based on the provision of raw materials and components. There's no coordination, as there is no explicit purchasing strategy and goals are primitive. The supply relationship is reactive and generally focused on administrative tasks. The commercial orientation is when the procurement and supply function operates as a standalone function. The relationships with suppliers is based on proactive negotiation, aimed at achieving the lowest price. That involves specialist buyers, monitoring savings and measuring performance based on price variance. Coordinated purchasing. There are uniform policies and clear purchasing processes and systems that focus on cross-unit coordination and compliance. Internal relationships are managed through rules and procedures. There is control of purchasing of non-production items, and purchasing power is developed. The procurement and supply function is bureaucratic and slow to respond to other business units, but is attracting attention from senior managers. Internal integration is where the supply chain relationship is more integrated, focusing on cross-functional problem solving and cost reduction. The procurement team interacts with supply partners for joint problem solving, streamlining procurement processes to meet the needs of an internal customer. You'll have integrated information systems to support cross-functional purchasing. External integration is integrating relationships with outsourced strategies to develop cooperation with your supply chain partners. Product development and pre-production planning are carried out. And systems are enhanced by technologically capable and interdivisional suppliers. With inter-organizational cross-functional teams, there is an integrated supply chain management. And the one missing from the bottom, which is the 6th stage, is value chain orientation. There is a recognition that procurement and supply strategy needs to be delivered and that delivers value to the end customer. Strong relationships are encouraged. Suppliers are challenged to support product development, to design an effective value chain. And procurement and supply relationships lead to virtual teams supporting an entrepreneurial culture throughout the supply chain. It's vital that a joint problem resolution mechanism is established to enable decisions to be taken quickly and effectively. This should be focused on seeking the best solution and not apportioning blame. Continuous improvement is one of the main drivers for partnering, leading to greater efficiency and competitive advantage. In order to demonstrate improvement, relevant indicators must be determined and performance measured. These can be compared with internal or external benchmarks. Partnering relationships can be assisted through the deliberate choice of participants that link the contractor and subcontractor across a network. But the behaviour of contractors, consultants and subcontractors will also have an impact on the relationship based on their commitment and openness. Now, resource loading is usually associated with the planning of human resources required for the duration of a project. Theoretically, the project would ideally have an average number of staff needed for the project, working on it from day one through completion, when all staff would be released. However, in reality, resource loading will fluctuate over time and over the course of the project, based on task intensity, availability of materials and equipment, and the critical path requirements of the project. The most efficient theoretical form of loading is mapped as a trapezoid. The model plots the staff against the project time needed to complete the work. The trapezoid resource loading has a uniform build-up of resources, followed by a level peak and the project ending with a uniform staff reduction at the end of the project. That's the one in the middle. In practice, project loading usually takes the form of a bell curve, which is the very last one. The bell curve peaks should enable and exceed the average staff loading curve by about 20 to 30%. Project peaks may not always be normally loaded, but instead may be front loaded, with more resource being needed at the beginning of the project. Then there's a rapid build up and a gradual reduction of staff towards the end of the project. But alternatively, projects may be backloaded with a slow build up of staff resource followed by a rapid acceleration at the latter end of the project. Backloading may be by result of inadequate supply of resources early in the project, leading to inefficiencies and overruns in project schedule and budget. At the planning stage, it is advisable not to book 100% of your employee project time, because time may be allowed for unexpected issues and overruns where task times can take longer than expected. Project leveling allows the project manager to schedule project tasks based on the availability of resources. This prevents problems arising due to resources being unavailable, which could lead to project overruns, underutilised resources, and cost overruns. So scheduling critical jobs first and non-critical jobs in between avoids fluctuations in the resource profile. However, determining what tasks should be in the critical path becomes more difficult as the project plan progresses. Resources can become stretched as project tasks and activities begin to overlap. Competing demands require the project manager to effectively allocate resources, and as the project enters the later phases, the scheduling becomes less accurate, which may result in the project failing to stay on track. So resource leveling focuses on time based on the start and end of the project, and resources including financial and manpower resources. So resource leveling essentially seeks to balance the tensions and competing requirements. Now, many organisations have several projects going on at once. That means although project resource planning is important, because usually your team member is active on several different projects at the same time. Why is this a problem? Well, scheduling becomes complicated when the same resources are shared across divisions with multiple project managers. Or when different projects have competing priorities from leadership, this can create conflict among teams and have an impact on your schedule. It can also lead to the best resources becoming burned out. You need to actively manage their tasks, not just on one project, but on all of them together. That's no small feat, but there are 9 tips for scheduling resources successfully across multiple projects. Minimize the overlaps, schedule for busy times, collaborate on scheduling, know where to focus your resources, use the right level of scheduling, talk to other project managers, use workload scheduling, dashboards, and understand how to manage absences. Now, the initial investment into project management information systems can seem overwhelming, but can be acquired for a relatively small amount depending on the size and financial capability of the company. However, a project management information system is capable of dramatically lowering risks and improving processes throughout the project. It provides advantages in terms of time, accessibility, and standardization. The computer processes large volumes of data quickly and accurately. Where a change is necessary, it will recalculate times and resources in a fraction of the time it would take you to do it manually. And the software allows for rapid production and communication of management information. Recipients of the management information can interrogate the system or work interactively with it. But also, a computer makes it possible to schedule a program of many projects altogether in one combined multi-project calculation. It makes for standardization. In organizations where project work is frequent, users benefit by being instantly familiar with the layout of the project plan. And in terms of leading and managing projects, the leadership skills for project manager is motivating and inspiring. Leaders develop a vision and then continually communicate that vision throughout the organization, working with the team to achieve the vision. They need to do team building, negotiating and communicating, as well as listening and influencing. Now, the critical chain methodology comes from critical chain project management, which is a method of planning and managing projects that emphasize the resources, which is the people, equipment, and physical space that is required to execute project tasks. And large-scale projects often require project finance to pay for the capital expenditure that's required to cover the cost of projects. Asset finance is used by organisations to obtain the finance to invest in large-scale complex projects, and that's in order to facilitate business growth. It requires the organisation to pay a regular charge to use the asset over the period, which enables the organisation to avoid purchasing the equipment at full cost. But there are 4 types of asset finance. Hire purchase, also known as lease. This enables the organisation to own the asset following the payment in regular premiums. At the end of the rental agreement, the organisation can choose to purchase the asset or return it to the leasing company. You can structure your payments, reducing regular rental payments, or make a balloon payment reflecting the value of the asset at the end of the agreement. A finance lease involves a calculated rental over a specific lease term. The cost of the asset can be recovered by the bank or leasing company over the term of the agreement. But the organisation does not own the equipment, but the bank or leasing company may allow it to benefit from the sale of proceeds. And then an operating lease. This runs for the time, it's actually less time than the full economic life cycle of an asset. And the residual value of the asset and the risk of that residual value of the asset being less than forecasted remains with the leasing company or bank. They may make a rental payment, but it doesn't cover the full cost of the asset over the lease period. And then an asset loan. This is secured against the collateral of the asset, which is used to secure against the debt. It releases cash from the balance sheet, providing the organisation with higher levels of working capital. This enables the organisation to leverage its assets more effectively and raise funds for large-scale investment. It can be used to do lots of things, actually, what you can see on the screen: minimise risk, release cash, additional credit lines, funding, reduces uncertainty, cuts waste, and faster decision making. They can work in partnership with organisations to provide tailored solutions for the acquisition of new assets or for replacing old assets that need to be retired. And they can support organisations when they're expanding their business. So this comes from an author called Biggins, proposed an iterative 5-stage conceptual project management lifecycle, which includes feedback loops. This requires the project manager to select the project management model, for example, PRINCE2. More complicated, larger projects may require an investment in a particular project management method. This stage outlines the strategic requirements for the project manager, the model, the scope, creation of a PID, business case, and goal setting. In the embed stage, the second stage, You embed the chosen project management model into the organisation's environment. The project manager will need to balance the demand for the standardised approach with the requirements for agility. It's at this stage that the project management method is embedded into the work practices of the organisation. Moving on to tailor. This tailors the scale of the project management method for the project, for example, combining project elements or including less detail when filling out project templates. Activities during this stage include scaling the approach and managing the capabilities of the project team. When you get to the fourth stage, operate, this is often viewed as the most critical part of the project lifecycle for enhancing project outcomes. Activities include project planning, execution of project plans, reporting, communicating with stakeholders, managing risks, resolving issues, monitoring and controlling the benefits. And the final stage is develop. Review the strategic goals from the select stage and the governance goals of the embed stage. The output will help the project be more effective and efficient, benchmarking the project performance to optimise involvement, and the activities include maintenance, reviewing internal and external performance and process improvements. Project life cycles are promoted by the PMI as a highly level process broken down into 5 stages. And that's aimed at delivering project outcomes, enabling the project manager to lead and facilitate the project through its life cycle, initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, control, and closing. So the most important thing to remember about the initiation process is that it doesn't involve starting work on creating any of the outputs of the project. It's concerned exclusively with clarifying project objectives and what is needed to achieve them. It should answer open questions relating to the objective of a project. How is it going to be funded and who's involved? The primary goal of the inception phase is to achieve stakeholder consensus regarding the objectives of the project and to obtain the funding. The major activities of this phase include contract mobilisation, meetings and planning. During the third implementation phase, the project plan is put into motion and the work of the project is performed. And during project implementation, people are carrying out tasks, outcomes are being delivered, and progress against the plan is being reported through the regular team meetings. Creating lasting change is a main objective of many development projects. However, in most of the projects, there is a considerable uncertainty on what is going to happen after withdrawal or externally provided project support, and how initiated by development projects will be self-sustaining. A project plan must be in place to ensure the results of the projects are maintained. Project coordination is the day-to-day management of tasks within your department. And the purpose of coordinating projects is to streamline the workflow of your tasks. So a project manager informs employees about who's responsible for each section of the projects and its deadlines. Project control are processes for gathering and processing and analysing project data to keep costs and scheduling on track. The functions of project control include initiating, planning, monitoring and controlling, communicating and closing out project costs and schedules. And project control is not simply waiting for things to go wrong and then fixing it. It chiefly has 3 systems to identify problems before they manifest. The 3 basic types of control mechanisms are cybernetic, go, no-go, and post-performance. The first step taken when closing down a project is to create a project closure report. It's extremely important that you list every activity required to close the project within the report to ensure the project closure is completed smoothly and efficiently. The report will evaluate performance, structure, teamwork and techniques, finishing off with a description of lessons learned. Project closure reports are the thing that normally get forgotten as people have moved on to a new project, and as such, it can be difficult to do well, if not planned for. So you need project performance, the comparison of what the project achieved against what it tried to achieve. Administrative performance, which is a summary of how well the admin aspects of the project were handled. The structure, including comments on how the structure helped or impeded the progress of a project, and I mean organisational structure. The project and admin teams, which is a confidential summary of the performance of any individuals. Techniques of project management, a summary of how well the project team performed in areas of forecasting, planning and budgeting, as well as scheduling, resource allocation, risk management and control. But finally, and most importantly, lessons learned, which is a guide for other projects and projects teams based on your finding. So once the project is complete, the lessons learned will be included in the reviews. This learning from experience will be used to improve project performance in future. This will be combined with knowledge gleaned from training and development that will provide external knowledge to improve further. And this is known as PERT. And that's the end of Learning Outcome 1. Thank you for watching.